One. Welcome to another edition of the PhinManiacs.com podcast. I am your host, Louis Sung, and with me, as always, is... Oh, wait, okay, not yet. Chad Ronbaum is not here yet, but he will eventually show up. Until then, we have Ron Kniff of Unsquish the Fish joining us, and he's at Finn's Broadcaster now, so there's no confusion. I want to get that out of the way right now. In any case, Ron, good to have you.
Hey, thanks for having me, man.
All right, so we got a lot of stuff to talk about today. We have our monthly interview, and this month we got Jacques McClendon. So at 8:30 we'll be playing our interview with him, and we had a lot of stuff to talk about with him. Actually, a lot of stuff about the O line, and also some very interesting information on what it takes to be able to move over on the offensive line. So that's going to be very prevalent to the Laremy Tunsil discussion. So that's going to be very interesting. We'll also be discussing the extension given to star pass rusher Cameron Wake. There's actually not a whole lot of people. There are actually I should get, let me rephrase. There actually are not that many people who are happy with this whole situation. They are looking at it and thinking this was not a good move for the Miami Dolphins at this point in time. And we'll discuss the whys and why they could be wrong or why they may have a point. And also, thanks because Ron is here, we're going to have some discussions regarding a recent article that he wrote up on the website, and it seems to have made him the target of much scorn. So we'll give Ron a chance to explain himself, so to speak. And actually, that's what's going to be first up on the block. And Ron, you did an article. Actually, it's going to be two articles. I haven't had the chance to get it up on the website yet for defense. But on the offensive side of the ball, you wrote up a very controversial cut that a lot of people had a problem with for you doing it, apparently. So you decided to cut wide receiver Kenny Stills and not let him make the 53-man roster. So a lot of people gave you a lot of flack for that, and understandable since Kenny Stills was a starter last year. So with that in mind, go ahead and explain to everybody why you decided to give Kenny Stills the boot.
Well, first of all, I have to say that this is my philosophy anyway. If you want to be able to make predictions, which we're kind of in the game, you and I, Lewis, of trying to maybe make correct predictions. Analysis, yes, but we'd like to make correct predictions. If you want to make more correct predictions than other people, look at what the team does. Don't listen to what they say. Don't listen to what other people say, and try and take your personal bias about how you feel, good or bad, about a player. For instance, Ajayi, you may like him, you may hate him, but all signs indicate that they are trying to upgrade that position. Why would they work so hard to upgrade a position if they have a player they love? It's because they don't have a player they love. That's case in point. They're looking to upgrade the running back position. They've tried 3 or 4 different times. In the case of Kenny Stills, you've got Devontae Parker, you've got Landry, Kenny Stills sitting at third. He was not a big producer, and it didn't really work with Tannehill. You can blame it on Tannehill. You can blame it on Laser. You can blame it on Philbin. You can just blame it on the whole offense wasn't very good. But also his production in New Orleans wasn't amazing, on top of the fact that a team in New Orleans who had just traded Graham, Colston was old, Brandon Cooks, their second-year wide receiver, was hurt. I think at the time might have been their first one-year wide receiver, was hurt a lot. I mean, they didn't really have much there anyway, and they trade supposed this great talent and Kenny Stills away. So add that to the fact that the Dolphins just went out and got 2 bona fide wide receivers on top of already having Devontae, Landry, Stills, and maybe you could even say a third, a tweener in Thomas Duarte. All signs to me indicate that they're going to be moving on from Kenny Stills, and that could be sooner rather than later. Also, Stills was the previous regime's grab, not Gase and Greer's. So again, when I published this article, or when I wrote this article, I said at the beginning of it, it was an outside of the box thinking. All the other 53s I'd seen were very straightforward. They were very obvious. There was no, for the most part, there wasn't really any kind of, well, maybe this will happen, maybe that'll happen, that'll surprise us, because there's always surprises. So I purposely went to try and find the surprises, but I think I more than made my case on the reasons why Kenny Stills could not be a member of the Miami Dolphins starting week 1. But people can't get their personal bias towards his running ability or what he thinks they should be, or the fact that he was just, it was Laser's fault, it was Philbin's fault, it was Tannehill's fault. Like, they can't get that out of their mind to think that maybe he's not that great, But don't all the signs of the Miami Dolphins of what they've done with their actions, not their words, their actions indicate they're not feeling like, oh, let's go re-sign this guy this year to a multi-year deal. I don't think you go out and do what they did in the draft if you're willing to, if you're going to go re-sign Kenny Stills. So why not possibly, maybe, if you could get a fifth, sixth round pick for him, you probably won't get much more than that because he's his last year guy. So that team's kind of chancing, hey, is this guy going to resign? And yes, I know that 1.67 million savings isn't huge savings, but a team that's been trying to save as much as they can and trying to look for the future, especially with the comp picks, grab another pick, save a little money. It's zero dead money. I mean, I built the case like a lawyer, but no one wants to see it because they're just stuck on Kenny Stills and their quote unquote ability that didn't work that well with Drew Brees, and he threw for 5,000 yards a season. So I don't know why it would be any better than Miami. And really, I don't know what more I can say about it than that.
Well, you're being accused of just going for wow factor and consider. And again, It's not that I personally I don't agree with your point, other because I still think Kenny Stills can be decent. I think he can be a good player, but that's just me. You have your way of seeing it. What's going on here is that a lot of people are just saying, "Oh, Ron's just coming up with stuff to get clicks," which is the ultimate accusation in writing.
They tried to call me Omar on these Twitter streets. Haha.
That's even worse
Yeah.
than just saying that you're
It was not a clickbait. The article was written to purposely try and go outside the box some and look at some possibilities of things that could happen that could be surprises, but where I could make the case. I think I made the case. I may be right, I may be wrong. You may disagree with me, but I definitely made the case on my side. The only case I can see is on the other side is like what you said. Well, I think he might be able to be good. Well, that's not a case. And what the Miami Dolphins actions were in this draft don't indicate that they're in love with Kenny Stills, just like their actions this offseason don't indicate that they're in love with Ajayi. On the other hand, if they didn't really like Tannehill, would they have re-signed Matt Moore, or would they have gone to try and find him real competition? Don't pay attention to what teams do say. Pay attention to what they do. And so as I wrote this article, that is what I tried to always do. And when I make a guess on something, I always try and pay attention to that. You're not always going to be right, of course, but I feel like I'm going to get it right more than not. I feel like I got a good shot on this one. And I tell you what, don't let me be right, because I have taken absolute ridicule over the last 36 hours for this Kenny Stills. And the funny part is in that article, I put it on Arian Foster on the 53-man roster. The dude ain't even on the team. Like, I thought that's what I would catch so much flack for, and maybe deservedly so, because I was going with what are they doing? They're trying to upgrade. So I figured, okay, I'm just going to take a shot at the most likely guy they'll grab, because I feel like they're going to grab another running back. I just feel like they want to do that. So I took a shot on a guy instead of copping out and saying, free agent to be named later, which I actually, teaser, do that once on the defensive side when when that gets published. I decided to pick a name this time. Is all. I mean, nothing. I mean, barely anyone mentioned the Arian Foster thing, which to me would be, if you were going to say Ron's trying to do something for wow factor, maybe you would point to that, even though it wasn't. But the Kenny Stills thing, man, it's just people are just in love with this speed guy who is just nothing but Mike Wallace light to me. I don't know. I think I built my case for it. If people don't want to see it, people don't want to see it.
Well, I wouldn't agree with that. I mean, Mike Wallace, calling him Mike Wallace, I think, is an insult to Kenny Stills. I mean, let's not act like he didn't try. Like, he was definitely out there giving it his all. And I remember the one play that it was in the end zone, he reached out and grabbed it for a touchdown. That was a deep ball that was a nice connection, and it made us think, oh, that's what Kenny Stills was meant to do. So let's not say he's Mike Wallace. Okay, let's not go that far, Ron. Like,
Well,
that's an insult.
I'm making, yeah, it is an insult. I'm not trying to insult Kenny Stills. I'm just making the comparison of a guy that just runs a fast 9 route, and that's what we're really looking at. And we're in love with that. And you could say, oh, he's got all this potential. He's got all this potential. Well, if he had all this potential, why did a team just hard up for receiver help just trade him away like that? You know what I mean? It's just, come on. Clues. This is what we call a clue. And that's why I just feel like I built a really good case for this. I understand if people don't agree, but I don't understand why I'm just getting hammered for it. I'm really surprised by it, actually. But
Well,
it definitely wasn't a wow factor thing. The whole article wasn't supposed to be a wow factor. It was just supposed to be, hey, I'm going to think outside the box a little, have a little fun with it. But I mean, nothing I put on there, I didn't back it up with information, thoughts, facts, if you will. And I backed this up with several facts, not just opinions.
well, presumably Kenny Stills was traded away because there were issues in the locker room. At least Kenny Stills and Drew Brees did not get along for whatever reason, and it wasn't on the field. It was an off the field thing that caused him to be moved out. And when considering who he is, when Drew Brees talks, you kind of have to listen. So maybe it was him who said, I want him out, or maybe it was just that the locker room wouldn't handle it. Kenny still doesn't seem like a bad guy to me. I've met him a couple of times. He seems nice enough, but I guess if they're telling the truth, then I don't see why they would lie about that sort of a thing. If he really was not an issue in the locker room, then I don't see why they would try to make it seem like he was. Like, that doesn't help anybody. It doesn't help the team. It doesn't help them get a better deal from the team they're trading to. Because if you tell him this guy is a locker room cancer, then they're gonna demand less to bring on your locker room cancer. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but they said that after the fact. And anytime you see a team say something about something like that after the fact, you know that they're playing the PR game.
Was it
That's
after?
just,
I know.
yes, it was after. They're playing the PR game in that fact. And I'll give you a perfect example with that, and that's a very recent example. The abuse that the Baltimore Ravens were taking for taking Stanley, do I have that, Ronnie Stanley,
Yes.
over Tunsil was heavy. So all of a sudden, 3-4 days later, hear this report. The second we saw that video, we took Tunsil off our board. Well, I almost kind of doubt that's true. Honestly, they just wanted to kind of calm down the PR craziness for a little bit, and Baltimore radio and Twitter going nuts on them for it. So that happens all the time in the NFL. You see teams release statements like that after the fact to calm down something that might be less popular with the fans. So I don't really point that to evidence. I just point more to look at the situation they were in. They made that trade of a very talented guy in his supposed prime going into his third season, which is supposed to be the big season for wide receivers, and they traded him away. And then he comes to a team where they are obviously looking to replace him. So you're telling me right now, if a team who's looking for a speedy wide receiver offers Miami Dolphin a 5th or 6th round pick for Kenny Stills, he's not gone like that. He's gone like that. And that could happen anytime from now to the season starts. I mean, he is definitely in that situation right now. Cut maybe less likely, trade definitely. And again, a trade will give them full value. His full 1.6 million will be off the books, and they will save that money because they're probably planning, at least hoping, to keep the wide receivers they drafted anyway. So you may not agree with it, and you may like Kenny Stills, but you can't say I'm not making sense with what I'm saying. What I'm saying makes sense. People just want to see, oh, Kenny Stills is so great, and he's going to be awesome under Gase. People just have this dream. I think that's what it is. Gase came, and everybody thinks about how Kenny Stills is going to be so amazing. So when all of a sudden they read this and Kenny Stills is not on there, they had a cow, honestly, and flipped out on me, which, again, I didn't write it to cause that reaction. I honestly thought the Arian Foster thing was going to catch a lot more flack. Like I said, barely a mention. The Kenny Stills thing, man, that really surprised me. I have to admit, that surprised me. That definitely caught me off guard. And if I wrote it for clicks and wow, it wouldn't have caught me off guard, but it definitely did.
So, just to be clear, then, you are convinced that Matt Hazel would be a better choice than Kenny Stills, because Matt Hazel, as far as I know, he's the same age. He's only like maybe 1 inch taller, and he's not nearly as fast as Stills. So, you're assuming that Matt Hazel's gonna get the call over Kenny Stills?
Yes, in this scenario, I am assuming. And if it's not Matt Hazel, there's a list of guys on there that might produce in camp and they decide, hey, this guy's been really good. We want to keep him. I mean, I didn't know a lot of the other guys enough to know to make that decision. I was just more putting Matt Hazel in there as the holding spot because I don't believe that Kenny Stills will be on the roster come week 1. I could very well be wrong, but I don't believe he will.
Well, it'll be interesting to see how it goes come training camp, because that I feel is probably that's probably going to be one of the biggest things that people are going to be looking at you, because if Kenny Stills winds up staying, or if he winds up balling out in camp, they're going to be coming at you in droves.
Oh
So
yeah,
where
all
was
year,
that now?
all year, and I'll just say, hey, I was wrong, and move on. I'll just say I was wrong and move on. I mean, lots of people say things on Twitter a lot that are wrong,
Hmm.
including people who write articles, whether they're hacks like me or professionals, or they're on ESPN, or they write their own little personal blogs, or they're just on Twitter tweeting stuff. Whatever it is, it's fine. I've been wrong before. We've all been wrong before.
Hmm.
Everyone's been wrong before. This will be no different. I just look at the information I have in front of me and thought, well, if there was going to be a kind of a surprise, a Dolphins fan, that could be one. And I feel pretty strong about it. Now, I'll preface it by saying when we first signed Kenny Stills, uh, I said all the same stuff before. Now, obviously, not about us drafting players because that hadn't happened yet. But the reasons why the trade happened, I've questioned it from the very first second that he was on the team, and I've never stopped questioning it. And nothing he showed us last year really changed my mind. Honestly, nothing he showed in New Orleans really changes your mind. Honestly, I mean, the guy's never been more than, I mean, 5 touchdowns with a guy who can throw 45 touchdowns in his sleep, and he managed to get 5 on him as like kind of a primary receiver. Not really impressive to me. I just, I don't understand the love for Kenny Stills. What has he done in 3 years to just express such love, except that he's fast?
And he has
What
awesome
did he
hair.
do? And then he has awesome hair, greatest hair ever. What did he do? He's fast. You know what? Fast doesn't always win in the NFL. Show me the receiver on New England that opens up the field and runs the nine and is fast. Yeah, and they get to the Super Bowl every other year. So it's not necessarily you have to have that guy, that speedy 9 route running fast 4.2, 40 kind of guy, in my opinion.
No, you have a point. It's just a matter of how they're utilized. Here's the other thing, and I'm sure that if Hillbilly Brent is listening, he's probably getting ready to do an "oh yeah, dig it, brother" all over you. You brought in Brandon Doty, and there's 3 quarterbacks on your list.
Yes, I did, and the numbers worked out. On that one, this is how I feel about it. He was a very good college quarterback. Yes, granted, he was playing Western Kentucky and playing Western Kentucky competition, but in 2 years, he threw for really close to 10,000 yards total and 99 touchdowns with a 69% completion percentage and a 71% completion percentage last year. What he does not have is an NFL arm. He just does not. There have been some good quarterbacks in this league, including Chad Pennington, that did not have an NFL arm. What I feel about that is I feel he'll do well enough in camp that they don't want a chance cutting him and another team grabbing him on waivers, which will kind of force them to put him on the 53 and carry 3 quarterbacks. That's the reason I did that. I think he's going to do good enough and show enough promise that they don't want to risk it, because they're trying. They're not necessarily trying to groom Tannehill's replacement. They're trying to groom Matt Moore's replacement. I mean, that's really what that pick was about, honestly. And then see what else maybe they could get for him, or even do the Belichick thing where you draft quarterbacks he drafts like Belichick drafts quarterbacks like you invest in real estate. You draft them, you fix them up, and then you sell them for more. And that's kind of what Belichick's been doing for years. And then one day he'll just settle on one and decides, okay, I'm going to live here once Brady's gone. But I think it's more they're trying to get Matt Moore's replacement. And if they like him in training camp, they're not going to risk another team grabbing him. That's really the big reason I've got 3 on the roster.
Well, my prediction, just for the record, is that if Tom Brady retires, Bill Belichick goes with him. I don't think he's going to want to coach without Brady, not after the
Uh,
legacy they've put together.
yeah, that may be true.
So, hooray! That would mean the Dolphins have a free trip to the AFC East every year.
Well, at least we won't have to deal with Brady and Belichick anymore. I mean, who knows what else? We have to still deal with our own ineptness. Ineptness, is that the right word?
Ineptitude.
Ineptitude. There you go. Sometimes, but at least we won't have them to deal with anymore.
Yeah, there is that. Brandon Doty, he's an interesting prospect. A lot of people saw him as a mid-round pick. I'm not exactly sure why he fell, but he did. And I mean,
Arm strength. It really is. He
was
really
it?
doesn't truly have an NFL arm. If he had an NFL arm with the numbers he put up, I really feel like he'd have definitely gone a lot higher. I don't think he'd have been a top round pick or anything, but he'd
Yeah,
have been a lot higher with an NFL arm.
yeah. So Okay, so let's see. It's 8:23. We have about 7 minutes to go before we just we start up our interview. I want to make sure we do that on time. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about Cameron Wake, Ron. Cam Wake was given a 2-year, $15 million extension, and he'll be. And there was a video on Twitter from the Miami Dolphins official Twitter page. The Cam Wake telling the fans, "It looks like you got me for 2 more years," which is, I mean, the fan part of you is obviously excited because it's freaking Cameron Wake, but apparently there's a bunch of financial advisors out there who are saying that this was a terrible move for the Dolphins and they shouldn't have done it because now they're on the hook for more money on a guy who just came off an Achilles injury and so
Yeah.
go ahead.
I think it's a pretty good move. I don't mind it. He's still an elite pass rusher. He may no longer be a 3 down elite defensive end that you put in every play, even though he will be played that way this year for lack of not having anybody else, because that's the way it's just going to go down. He probably would still be best served to just be a pass rusher type guy and be in there 2/3 of the time. But he still has elite pass rushing skills, and he's worth the money just because he's just top 5 in the league when it comes to that, honestly. And those guys are just hard to come by, even at his age. And so I don't mind the move. And I know they were trying to lighten his cap number for this season for whatever reason. I don't know what it is they keep trying to lighten it for. I don't know what they have in store right now. Maybe they're looking to make some moves internally as far as re-signing some guys, Rashad Jones, to name a few. But I don't mind the move at all. I don't think it's bad.
The thing with Cameron Wake is that we keep we keep saying he's an elite pass rusher, and I personally would never uh, vote against Cameron Wake. I would never bet against him. If I ever went gambling, I would say that Cam Wake comes back stronger than ever. But the idea is that he's not going to be elite anymore because apparently the Achilles is very important, especially coming off the line with the initial burst. Like I remember somebody said something along the lines of, and I'm not a doctor and I don't know if they're a doctor, so but what they seemed to say made sense, so I'm gonna say it anyway. So if somebody can prove me wrong, if they're doctors and they can like to tell me otherwise, please tell me. I would love to learn. But supposedly, like 90% of the burst off the line is dependent on that Achilles. And for Cameron Wake to be able to do what he does, he's going to be putting a lot of pressure on that very muscle. So, for all we know, it could snap again the first time he tries to actually go full speed, and that's the concern.
I mean, I think they probably wouldn't have made the move if the doctors didn't didn't sign off on it. That's my guess, but I don't know for sure. I guess when I was speaking less to the injury and more to just the performance and production. The injury, that's a separate issue. They have to have been comfortable with that in order to make the deal.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with it really. I mean, it's Cameron Wake, guys. Let's be honest about this for a second. So I think oh my gosh, we've already burned through all of our topics here.
We only got 3 minutes to go, so we
The
could talk about. I caught some slack for also having 4 tight ends on my list too, and we want to
Okay,
talk about that for 2 minutes.
sure, go for it. Two
Might as,
minutes.
might as
Let's
well
go.
finish. Might as well finish me off. Well, my thought or process in that was Thomas Duarte, the 7th round pick that we drafted out of UCLA, I believe. He's kind of a tweener. He's like 225 pounds, and what I stated in the article that he was kind of like Michael Floyd. And then somebody said, "Well, Michael Floyd did play tight end," and then I was like, "Well, you didn't watch the Arizona Cardinals play last year because yeah, he did play that pass catching tight end type player." Out of the tight end spot. So they're going to try and convert him, but he is almost kind of like a wide receiver. So and so I had 5 wide receivers instead of 6 and 4 tight ends, but Duarte kind of is in the middle. And that's how I justify that. I think it makes sense. I honestly think that when the Dolphins sit down, for this first part of this, when the Dolphins sit down, every consideration I put in there will be discussions they're having. I'd like to. I'm not going to toot my own horn, but I'd be willing to bet that most of these things, and this will be another one. Well, do we like them? Do we want to keep them? We don't. Okay, we want to keep them. So does that mean we're keeping 4 tight ends because we like Stoneburner too? And if we are, then are we keeping 5 wide receivers because we can kind of use this guy as both? Plus, you got Drake you could line up in there sometimes in some special plays. You got 7 guys you could really line up at wide if you needed to do that. How many teams can even say that? Plus, you've got Cameron, Sims and Stoneberger. Like, you've got tons of pass catchers. So it's not odd to me that you would do that. The numbers definitely worked out. I kept triple and quadruple counting to make sure I had the numbers right.
All right. So, okay, Thomas Duarte. We'll probably come back to that later. Oh, and I almost forgot. Peyton Manning came and visited the Dolphins earlier this spring. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But now it's 8:30, so we're gonna go ahead and get ready to play our interview with Miami Dolphins guard / center Jacques McClendon. So, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoy. We are joined by Miami Dolphins guard / center Jacques McClendon, and Jacques, it's a pleasure to have you with us today.
I appreciate y'all having me on today. I really appreciate it.
All right, so, and also joining me is my co-host, Chad Ronnebaum. He'll be joining us for this interview. Say hi, Chad.
Hey, Jacques, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you also.
All right, so we're going to go ahead and get this thing started. A lot of stuff going on this offseason, a lot of new faces, a lot of old faces departing. So the first thing I want to ask you is, what do you, now that you've played for multiple coaching staffs, so how do you feel about Adam Gase and this staff going into this season?
I think the best thing that Coach Gase has done, he's come in and established that everybody has a clean slate. So we're all in here to work and compete. Everybody's trying to, make a name for themselves with a new staff. So everybody's working hard and really getting down to the grindstone because, Coach Gase has really put it out there that everybody's got a clean slate and that it's a new beginning in Miami.
And this clean slate that you talk about, you said that everybody has this feeling of that they can go ahead and get started. How are you feeling going into training camp with all the competition right now at offensive line?
I think it's awesome. I think we see the best thing about our room is that there's obviously a bunch of competition going on, but at the same time there's a lot of helping going on. So we work well together, and whatever happens in September will happen. But as of right now, everybody's working real hard together. There's no egos in our room. Our new offensive line staff is awesome. There's been a lot of great work and coordinating with each other on how we're picking up the new offense and whatnot. So there's a lot of competition in our room right now, but at the same time, we have a lot of hard workers and a lot of great guys. So it's actually been really fun and refreshing.
Jacques, this is Chad. Again, thanks for coming on the show. It's always a pleasure to have players. Something that I think is unique that, a lot of the fans may not be aware of is the number of offensive linemen we have on the team that played at the University of Tennessee. And I honestly don't know, had you played some with Dallas Thomas or Juwan James before joining the Dolphins, or had you met those guys? And also, could you just kind of talk about what that dynamic's like being all on the same professional team?
So I definitely was there with Dallas for 2 years. Me and Dallas knew each other real well from our time in Knoxville. I actually missed Juwan by probably like 2 weeks. He enrolled that January, and I played my last game that December. So he was a January enrollee for his freshman year. So I literally missed him by 2 weeks, but we knew of each other. We knew each other, so I think it's awesome being in the same locker room. We definitely talk a lot of Tennessee stuff. A lot of people give us a lot of heckling, obviously, because we're all Tennessee guys. But the dynamic's awesome. I think that Coach Jones down in Knoxville has created this VFL atmosphere, and I think that, we carry it, wherever we go. We got Matt Darr in the locker room office, another Tennessee guy. So, it's always good to have somebody from the same quote-unquote fraternity that you're from.
Yeah, that has to be interesting on college game day sometime on Saturdays, I would think, in the locker room or when you guys are around each other. I'd be some smack talk going on in my house anyway, in that case.
Always.
One question in general, and this is something, the fans aren't really aware of, and maybe there's not, but, with the new coaching staff, that there is typically a change up in scheme. And have you noticed any fundamental difference on what the guards are going to be asked to do with the new staff that might have been different from prior seasons?
Fundamentally, we got a great offensive line staff, and I think that there's not going to be per se much technique difference in what's going to have to be done. We're just going to keep working on getting better every day and making sure that we're getting better on the nuances of being an offensive line because, to be a good offensive lineman, you got to repeat things over and over and become a master of doing the same thing over and over. It's actually it's a pretty boring process, right? It's all about, are you getting your step down right? Is your set where it needs to be? So I think that being for the most part, being an offensive lineman is pretty universal, and every place is kind of trying to get the same thing done technique-wise. within their blocking strategies. But obviously, scheme-wise, there's some different stuff that we're going to have to adjust to with some calls and a couple of different techniques. But for the most part, I think that we're just going to try to get better at the basics of being an offensive line, and that's really where we started at this whole off-season program.
Sure, that makes complete sense. So, a little bit off the field in the off season, what kind of things do you like to do? I don't know if you like stay around the Miami area or if you go back to Tennessee, or what are your kind of hobbies and stuff you like to do in the off season?
So I'm a big I'm a movie buff. So these past couple of weeks, I've been hitting up these blockbusters that have been coming out and kind of been judging those. I love movies. Me and my wife and my daughter, we stay in back home in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and that we spend our whole off seasons there, and that's where I train, and that's where I grew up, where my wife grew up. So we spend a lot of time with family. But we love hiking in the mountains. We go hiking. We'll go up to Gatlinburg and go to Dollywood. My wife likes to go rafting down the Ocoee River. I'm a little too heavy for that, but if she wants to do that, I'll support her. But we like to do a lot of outdoor stuff. We'll go up to Cates Cove and sightsee and whatnot. But being in East Tennessee, man, it's a beautiful countryside, and we try to enjoy the outdoors as much as we can.
Now, before we get back to football here, Jacques, I do have a question for you, and it's something that my viewers are probably going to be wondering about. Team Ironman or Team Cap?
You know what? I'm going to have to be honest, man. Going into this, I'm a Tony Stark guy. Iron Man is my second series behind The Dark Knight. Like, the Iron Man movies are great to me. But the Black Panther came in strong on this movie. So, that being said, I have to go Team Captain, and it hurts me to say that. But
I thought he was on Iron Man's team, the Black Panther. Is he on the captain's team? I haven't seen the movie yet.
Yeah, I'm
pretty
sure. Yeah, it's hard to dissect, but I think that he ends up. Oh, I don't want to ruin the movie, so I'll just say Team Captain. I'll say Team Captain.
All right. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. Team Captain America for Jacques McClendon. Okay. So anyway, back to football. You guys have a new offensive line coach. It's Chris Forrester, a lot of experience, and he replaces John Benton. Have you noticed any differences in the way that he coaches compared to who was there before?
Man, Coach Forrester's done a great job of relating to the guys. There's been a great consistency on how he's relaying his message from day one. This is definitely not in any comparison to 2015 because 2016 it's a new year. But our new staff has done a great job of getting their doctrine of what they want to get done as an offense, and kind of making sure that we're going to have an identity and we're going to do some things a little differently. And they've done a great job of explaining things. And I think that the instruction that we've gotten over the past couple of weeks as we gotten back into the off-season program has been really well. Especially we had that mini camp a couple of weeks ago, and it actually went really smoothly for some people that are running the new offense. And I think that's just just speaks highly of the coaching that we had going into it. So they've just done a really good job with instruction. Everybody's been listening, and we've been working well together. And it's going to be. I'm excited to see what's going to happen this coming season.
Now, Chad brought up there's a bunch of guys from Tennessee. I wanted to ask, how important is it for an offensive line to have chemistry in order to function? Because we notice that sometimes plug and play doesn't really work that well because it kind of throws off the groove, so to speak.
No question. I think that, building an offense is a process, and especially offensive line, and that starts in, when we get back for off-season activities. It's a 4 to 5 month process of putting your stamp together to become a unit. And I think the best job that we do here is that we have tremendous leadership in our room, and that starts with obviously Mike Pouncey, Brandon Albert, and then now you add somebody like Jermon Bushrod. We got 3 veterans that have been at the top of their craft for a long time, and I think that they've done a great job of trying to mentor all the younger guys. These young guys around here don't know how good they have it because these older guys are really reaching out, and they're trying to make sure everybody is learning everything, and if they need extra help, they're giving it to them. So we have tremendous leadership in our room from a veteran standpoint, and I think that's going to pay dividends for this offensive line going forward, especially, like you said, with the cohesion piece you just asked about, because being cohesive as an offensive line is the most important thing, is that everybody's on the same page.
Sure, that makes complete sense. And Jacques, one question I just sometimes have in general, I'm always curious for players is, when you were coming up through high school and college and stuff, and I assume you were watching the pro football at that time, was there a particular player that you really looked up to or you tried to model your game after, or a player that really stood out to you, when you were coming up through the ranks?
I played high school football in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and the king of football around there is Reggie White. So growing up, just to see what, and rest in peace to a great man, just to see what he was able to do on and off the field. I mean, there's not many people of his caliber that have touched people from a Hall of Fame standpoint on the field, and also touched people from a quote-unquote off-the-field Hall of Fame standpoint of what he did through his ministry and his outreach and just being a great family man. So there's not many people that have been the best of both worlds, and I'm blessed to say that I played, high school football in the same city as Reggie White, who to me is the best Tennessee Volunteer of all time. I got the utmost respect for him as a person and player. So Reggie White was definitely somebody that I idolized growing up.
Yeah, wow, what a great pick. Probably one of the best ever on the defensive line for Eagles and Packers, both in the NFL. He was amazing. What other question in general, after football life's over, do you have any plans on what you're looking to do? You ever thought about coaching or getting into sports reporting, anything like that for you?
Yeah, I got my master's in sports management while I was at Tennessee, and I've already done some internships. Thank you, I appreciate it. I've already done some internships off the field. I've been to the NCAA national office. I went to the NFL league office over this off season. I've been able to do some things because I definitely want to stay in sport on the administrative side. I'm just trying to figure out if the professional or collegiate level is going to be a better fit for me. But I definitely, look, sports has blessed me with an unbelievable opportunity right now. I've got to play it at the highest level. I got to go to college tuition free and play in front of 100,000 people. What this sport does for some people, some of the opportunity it gives, especially for guys like me, because there's no way I could have afforded college without what football has given me. So I think that I want to ensure that people still get that opportunity, whether that's at the professional or collegiate level. I just want to make sure that football, stays true to the good and really helps people out and gives people opportunities they wouldn't have otherwise.
All right, Jacques. Now we're going to get to the very intellectual question, and this is going to be something that I was hoping you'd be able to explain to our viewers, since this is something, it's kind of a complicated process to try and figure things out unless you actually played the game. Now, everybody is going back and forth on whether or not Laremy Tunsil, the guy we just drafted, should be moved inside to guard or not. Now, my question to you is not whether or not should he. That's up to the coaches to decide. But what I wanted to know is, since you have played multiple positions, you've played guard, you've played center, what kind of a process is it that goes into, what goes through your mind when you have to switch from one position to another? Because playing guard and playing center are not the same thing. You kind of have to...
No question. I think the first thing that comes in the case is you have to be willing to make the move, right? I think you have to have an open mind, and you have to be willing to take coaching, because it is the absolute process, for somebody to move from the outside to inside. But, when you're talking about somebody like Laremy, he's obviously a special talent. You don't draft somebody that high and they don't have special skills. He had an unbelievable college career. Got to meet him last week. He's an upstanding guy, great guy. And he seems like wherever they put him at, I don't care if they put him at tight end. He sounds like he's willing to do whatever it takes. And that's what you want to hear from a young guy. You don't want to hear, hey, I'm just this position. No, you got to be open. He seems very open. He seems he's very articulate with his talking, and he's already asking for help, reaching out. So that's really the first and most important step, right? Is the willingness to change, because it's obviously going to be a process. But if you do not want to accept it on the front end, then it's going to be an even longer and harder process. So he's very willing to help his team out in whatever need necessary. And he's obviously a special talent who had a very special career at Ole Miss. So he's going to be fine wherever he plays at. You don't get drafted at high mistake. So he'll be a player no matter what they put him.
Okay, so now my question to you is, what is he going to have to be able to do in order to play guard? Now, obviously, playing tackle and playing guard are two different things. What goes into the guard part of it? Like, what do you have to make sure you're keeping an eye on?
Things happen a little faster. I think from a power standpoint, you're playing against bigger guys, so things happen a little quicker. Whereas when you're the more athletic tackles like himself and tackles in this league, they play in space more. So you got to change your game to playing in a phone booth and playing against power. So, but I think that I'll tell you one thing: it's definitely easier for a tackle to slide in the guard than it is for a guard to go out and play in space. So. I think that he's an exceptional athlete, and wherever they decide to line him up, he'll do a great job.
All right, then. So a vote of confidence from Jacques McClendon for Laremy Tunsil. Now, the other thing that they're worried about is that it may stunt his growth moving forward at left tackle. The idea is that eventually he's going to be the franchise left tackle, and I don't disagree with that. He's a rookie coming in, very highly touted, possibly the best offensive lineman in the whole draft. Have you ever run into a situation, not necessarily you, but do you know anybody who wound up getting moved over and it supposedly, quote unquote, stunted his growth?
I think that in this league, you're going to put the best players on the field at any possible given time, so you can get the best five. So I think that players play. Players don't ask questions; they just go play. And I think that he'll have that same mentality as you just go play, because the best five will be on the field, and whoever that best five is, and when the season starts for the Miami Dolphins, that best five will be out there. Coach Gase has made that very transparent, because the competition is clear, and nothing will be given. So, however they can get that best five out there, they're going to get that best five. So you just got to be willing and open to accept your role, whatever it may be.
All right. So I think that's going to wrap it up. Thank you, Jacques, for joining us. We really appreciate you coming on with us.
No problem. I appreciate you having me.
Pleasure to have you, Jacques. Have a great day.
Yeah, you have a great one.
All right, so that was Jacques McClendon, guard/center for the Miami Dolphins, and we really enjoyed having him on, and great stuff from him. So now here's something for you all. The Miami Dolphins Foundation on May 20th to 21st will host the 20th annual Fins Weekend with funds raised benefiting City Year Miami. Events will start Friday, May 20th with the Fins Weekend Golf Tournament at Crandon Golf at Key Biscayne, followed by the Hook and Tackle Captain's Party presented by South Florida Ford. On Saturday, anglers can hit the waters for the Fins Weekend Fishing Tournament, weigh-in presented by Hooters South Florida and Fishing Awards Ceremony, and live auction at the Miami Beach Marina. For more information, visit finsweekend.com or call 305-943-7900. That's 305-943-7900. And that's it. So again, that was Jacques McClendon, guard and center for the Miami Dolphins, and he had some interesting things to say, especially right near the end there. He talked about what what Laremy Tunsil is gonna have to be able to do to play a guard. He talked a little bit about what goes into the mindset of making the switch. And I just want to point out that my co-host Chad Ronnebaum has finally shown up. Hey, Chad, what's going on?
Hey, going well. How you doing?
Doing all right. All right.
What have you guys talked about?
All right. We talked about everything we planned to talk about. So glad you're here, because we need some more stuff to talk about.
All right.
All right. But first, we have to react to the interview, and I'm going to go ahead and start with Ron, since he was the one who was not actually there during the interview.
I actually like the way you asked him a lot of questions about Tunsil and his transition to guard that he will be making, at least for the beginning of the season. Maybe it'll obviously he's going to give politically correct answers. He's not going to be like, man, the Dolphins are messing up. What are they doing? Obviously he's not going to say that. But I wasn't
looking for that either.
Yeah, no, I know. He gave good information, though, and good reasons. Didn't sound like he was trying to make it up to make it sound good. Like, he gave good reason, especially from a person who's experienced himself in playing different positions, as to why it's going to be okay. And it's not going to ruin Tunsil for the rest of his life, which I just think that's the silliest thing. Plus, in my mind, I feel like he's going to move over to tackle probably before the season even ends anyway. So let's just start our best five at the beginning of the season, and it'll just play out, and it's going to work. By next season, he'll be our left tackle permanently, and we'll never think about all this controversy that shouldn't be a controversy about how Tunsil started his season or his career off as a guard.
Yeah, I agree with you, Ron. That's I've seen a lot of whether it's on Twitter or responses to articles being written. A lot of people think that Tunsil's going to have a difficult time playing guard, and I don't think he's going to. I think more than anything, it's in a sense a waste of his ability. But I don't think he'll struggle at doing it. A guard, which you'll hear, and even in that interview with McClendon, you heard him talk about it. It's harder for a guard to play tackle than a tackle to play guard because a tackle has to play in space, and you got to deal with a variety of people from an outside linebacker type guy who's really quick. You got to be quick enough to get out of your stance and get your hands on him so he doesn't go right by you, to a guy like a Mario Williams on the Dolphins who can bull rush you. And Tunsil is one of those rare guys who can do both of those things on the outside of tackle. And so moving him into guard obviously seems crazy, but we don't necessarily need him to play tackle as much as we do guard right now to get our best five in the lineup. But I agree with you, Ron. I think it would have been wishful thinking this year to think Brandon Albert will play the whole season without any issues. He's had a history of back issues. He's obviously had some severe knee injuries now. And so he's up there at an age where I'd be really nervous to expect him to play all 17 games in a whole year. And if he does get hurt, even if it's for a few games, I mean, what a relief it is for the offense and for Tannehill to finally have a guy that can come in and play at a high level right behind him.
Yep, and now I'm going to go ahead and make another introduction. We just had Chris Early, otherwise known as Duke, call in on the show. Duke, nice to have you with us.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so just to give you a quick recap, we just played our interview with Jacques McClendon that Chad and I did earlier this afternoon. Lots of interesting stuff, especially near the end there when he talked about what Laremy Tunsil is going to have to be able to do in order to make a smooth transition to left guard. He talked about how he needed to make sure that he had the correct mindset, that he was open to making the change, which Tunsil appears to be. He also talked about how he's going to have to be able to put some more power into the punch, so to speak. He's going to have to, playing guard requires more brute force than playing in tackle, so that's also going to be something that Tunsil's going to have to work with. Now, since you actually didn't get to hear the interview, I'll probably play that for you a little bit later, by the way. But my question to you is, Duke, what are your thoughts on whether or not Tunsil should be moving over or not? Because it seems to be there's a lot of arguments going in both directions. So where do you stand?
Well, long term, you would like to see him start at left tackle and move Albert in. Albert's a veteran, obviously, and he's going to want to stay outside, but he's a guy that you want to move inside, in my opinion. I think he's probably a little better fit for it. And at this point, I think that would help prolong his career a little bit. And with Tunsil, you want him to start out there because that's where he's going to end up. He's going to stay there. He's not going to stay at left guard. It would take some kind of strange event for him to stay at left guard. And so he's your left tackle of the future. Just go ahead and put him there.
So your thoughts are simply that you should punch Albert inside.
I mean, he played guard in college, so he has done that before. Tunsil has not played guard, as far as I know, in college. So, I mean, Albert's got a little bit of experience there, and I understand him being a veteran. You want to stay outside or whatever, but he's still making the money. And I think the move there, he's probably at this point got a little more power than Tunsil. He's a little more polished than Tunsil. And while I think there's a slower learning curve for Tunsil outside than there would be inside, and Albert would make the transition a little easier. And that's how I would do it. I think you could probably get Albert at guard. I think you could probably get 2 to 3 more years out. He could probably finish his contract with Miami as a guard at tackle. I don't see that happening.
Well, I'm gonna give you the opposite argument here because it was last week that our team talked about how they're not sure that Brandon Albert's still able to do all that pulling and have that kind of power that he used to have in college. I mean, I believe he's over 30 now. He's banged up. He's been hurt over way too many times, more times than he has any business getting hurt. So the concern is not whether or not Albert can do it, is that can he do it better than Laremy Tunsil, who is at the top of his game, is at the peak of his development, and Albert is kind of on the downswing. Now, I understand the whole idea of Albert being older, he can probably survive more with help. But do you think that Albert still has the necessary athleticism to be playing and pulling at guard?
I think he does, and I think you hear a lot of people talk about with veteran tackles later in their career. Well, they may have to move to right tackle, or they may have to do this or that. I think because he's got the experience, he does have some experience at guard. I think you can move him in there, and I think it would work. And number one, one idea is you like to sandwich Tunsil in between Pouncey and Albert. You got two Pro Bowlers, two veterans, and know what they're doing. It would kind of help him out a little bit. With moving him inside, Tunsil's got the athleticism just to dominate at left tackle. I'd like to see him used there. And sometimes guys are just better, playing, outside of that little box. With a guard, you have to be able to play in that little short space. And I think Albert could do that better than Tunsil. That's kind of how I'm looking at it. I don't think you're going to really go wrong either direction. I just think Albert has the better tools to be a guard right now than he would be than Tunsil is. And I also think because, not that there's less stress on the position, but I think moving inside could help limit possibly some of those injuries that he has. That could come back. And so you can prolong his career, I think, a little bit that way.
Well, it's going to be going back and forth for a while. I don't know. I'm not sure if I have that faith in Brandon Albert, but it seems that the Dolphins seem more willing to let Tunsil do his thing. And there's also the added. I just realized I've remembered to bring this up. There's also the added drama that would happen if Albert was punched inside, because it seems to be that every indication we've ever had, every discussion that's ever been had about it, always has the preface of, but Albert doesn't want to move over. And I just have this feeling that if the Dolphins said, hey, Brandon, we need you to move inside, that there would be some kind of drama going on.
I don't know if that's true.
Possible.
I guess
it was the case in Kansas City, and that's exactly part of what the problem was when they drafted their left tackle. Albert said, I'm not moving inside the guard. I'm not even moving to right tackle. That's just the way it is, and I think they kind of know that ahead of time.
I understand why he did that then, because the reality is on the market, left tackles get paid way more than guards and more than right tackles, and so he did get his big contract now with the Dolphins, so that might make him a little more willing. But I'm just not convinced that it was. The issue I have is, are you moving Brandon Albert just for the sake of moving him? Because the guy just played in the Pro Bowl this year at left tackle, and he should be better this year than last year. Now that he's a year removed from the knee injury, so this is, a lot of people want to have what they see on paper fall in, but the reality is the best two starting tackles for Miami very well could be Brandon Albert on the left and Laremy Tunsil on the right. I know that makes you think, what about Juwan James? But my question would be, is Juwan James better than Laremy Tunsil and Brandon Albert? I don't know that that's a yes. And so, and I also don't know that Brandon Albert or Laremy Tunsil are better than like a Bushrod or or the existing guards, that have been playing it. And so to me, you just don't know that those guys are even upgrades to move in. Whereas, Brandon Albert is a Pro Bowl tackle. And I don't know. I guess that might be a question. So you guys think, what about, having Juwan James be a backup for a year until, next season, when the salary cap for Brandon Albert makes it very unlikely that they'll be able to afford to keep all three of those guys. But, if you're truly starting your best five at their positions, that may be the lineup.
Well, what you've got is, and I mentioned this on the Phinsider a while back when draft season was starting to get ramped up, and I found one of the guys on the side. They said, well, Miami's going to take, they're going to go offensive line in the draft. And at this point, everybody was like, no, they're going to go defense. Obviously, the Tunsil situation changed everything. But my response then was, well, if you draft a guy if you drafted Jacques McClendon, say, you don't have a problem moving him inside. And you could probably move him to left guard and keep him there his career. You wouldn't have a problem with that. The person that we were talking about at the time was Ronnie Stanley, and I said, here's the deal. You've got Juwan James on the right side, and he's going to be a starter. You're not moving him. You've got Brandon Albert on the left side, and you're probably not going to move him. You know, what do you draft a guy to redshirt with your first-round pick? And so right now you've got Pouncey at center, and in my opinion, you've got 4 tackles on the offensive line. I think Billy Turner is better fit as a tackle than he is a guard. You've got Jamil Douglas is probably one of the 2 true guards that are on the team. You know, you're just trying to fit basically you've got to fit 2 tackles somewhere into a guard spot, and the question has to be which one of those guys is the best. I don't think Juwan James can play inside. I think he struggles strength-wise. I think he's better out in space. I think Billy Turner can play inside some, but he's better moving forward as a run blocker than he is a pass blocker inside. I think if you moved him outside, I think you could actually replace Juwan James with Billy Turner at right tackle, and you do better. I think he in limited snaps in his rookie season, he did well there. I mean, I don't know. You've got the whole Bushrod situation. I mean, I think Tunsil could do well at guard. I think he's got the athleticism. I think he's got the mindset. He's got the work ethic and all of that to excel there. I would just rather see him start at left tackle and just put him there. Just say, you know, this is your spot. That's where you're going to be. We're planning on you doing this for the next 10 to 12 years. Have fun.
I agree with what you're saying in terms of you're maximizing his talents, but you know, and they may not, because a lot of the personalities come into that, and Juwan James is the #1 pick, and he definitely is a quality tackle, but Juwan James, the reality is not a Pro Bowl tackle right now, and I don't know if he'll ever be a Pro Bowl tackle. To me, he's always probably going to be just a solid tackle. And so I guess my question is, you know, where Brandon Albert is a Pro Bowl left tackle. He was this last year. And by the end of this last year, I thought he was back to playing at a pretty high level. And I don't know that it makes any sense to move Brandon Alberts if you don't have to. Now, if Brandon Alberts is more suited and can pick it up better, I understand that. But it just occurs to me on the surface anyway that your 2 most talented tackles on this team are Brandon Albert and Laremy Tunsil. And, you know, are you trying to make people happy, or are you trying to start your best players? Because I would think that's a dominating tackle combination if you have, whether it's Brandon Alberts or Laremy Tunsil on the right side right now and the other one on the left, and then you know, let the best man win. I agree with Duke. I don't think Juwan James would be a better than the current guards on the team, but I also don't know that Brandon Alberts would be better than Bushrod at guard. I don't know that he'd be better than Billy Turner at guard. And so it's like, to me, you're taking a guy that's playing a position at Pro Bowl level and moving him to a position where he may not be that good. So I think it's all about starting your absolute best talent. And, you know, I know Juwan James was the best pick, but it might be that he just needs to spend it, you know, at the beginning of the season anyway, as a backup, you know, as hard as that is. And he obviously come right in the lineup if either one of those guys got hurt at tackle. And we just have the luxury of having that extra depth for now.
Yeah, I mean, I could see. I mean, a lot of good guards started out as college tackles, but were, you know, kind of like the Cody Whitehair type prospects, or just maybe a little too small. One guy I always think of, Daniel Kilgore. He played at Appalachian State. He was a right and left tackle there, but he was you know, for that school he could do that. For the bigger school or for the pros, he just didn't have the size. He had to move inside. Now I think he's their starting center for the 49ers. So guys like that, had it been someone else, had it been another tackle, I would not have had a problem moving them inside and even keeping them there, like Joel Bitonio for the Browns. The problem with Tunsil is you have this guy is projected to be, you know, one of the best, if not the best, left tackle prospects come out in many years. You know, to me, it had been somebody else moving the guard and say, yeah, you know, do whatever. This guy, you kind of like, well, you know, he's kind of supposed to be a left tackle. That's what he was made for. I'm just trying to think. For me, it's about thinking for the future. Brandon Albert's not your future. Laremy Tunsil is. So to me, I would start him out there and, go with that. And I understand, how, and I don't think it's going to be an issue. I think Albert's probably he's going to miss some time because he always does. And it doesn't matter if he has a handful of games, but I think that, just go ahead and start Tunsil at left tackle and let him go there. I would not even personally be opposed to moving Brandon Albert. I don't know that I would want him to move to right tackle. I don't know that I would want to trade Juwan James, but if an offer came up sometime around, fifth or sixth week of the season, and a team like, say, Carolina, who kind of just has some guys there at tackle, and they're a championship caliber team, and they thought, hey, if Miami's kind of floundering a little bit, if Tannenbaum wouldn't call up and say, hey, you guys are headed to the Super Bowl again, we're not, you can take Brandon Albert off our hands for, whatever pick and see what you can get. I don't think that would be a popular move. I think that would be a smart move by the Dolphins, though.
One different way to look at this is we're talking a lot about the future of Laremy Tunsil and the importance of developing Laremy Tunsil, but we have a bigger question mark on our team that we have 1 year really left to figure it out. And where is Tannehill the future of this team? And one great way to get that figured out is solidifying the left side of the line at tackle, guard. You already got it solidified at center. So you've got the middle to the left, which is the most important part as far as the blind side of the quarterback. And we remember the Marino days with Sims and Webb and how solid it was and how huge that was for Marino, is they really have this year, Greer and Gase, to get a big gauge on Tannehill. And you can't to this point because he's getting so hammered. So they're willing to do what they have to do with Tunsil and Albert. They want the best five, especially the best two on that side, so they can really get the right look at Tannehill. That could be a big thing that they're looking at. That, to me, the future of that position is more important than even Laremy Tunsil, whether he plays guard for a year or not. And that could be part of what factors in to their decision.
And I think that goes into what I was talking about with a trade. Is that, let's say it's coming up toward the deadline, Miami's out of contention at this point. You can pretty much tell that Tannehill is not going to be the guy. I'll start shipping pieces, and Brandon Albert will be a guy with me. You could say, all right, we started those two guys on the left. We know Tannehill's not the guy now. Let's ship Albert so we have some pieces that we can move up in the draft next year to get our guy, if you needed to. That could be a component. You're not going to see Albert move now unless somebody blew them out of the water with a deal, and that's not going to happen. But I could see something happening mid-season where Miami starts auctioning off some of the older pieces like that to start moving up if a quarterback's necessary. I'm of the opinion it's not going to be necessary, but you never can tell. So, it wouldn't hurt to, if you're in that position, to start thinking about it. Since you have Tunsil there who you kind of figure he's going to be a centerpiece on your offensive line. So, move the other guys.
Yeah, if they're in a position where they're trading players off for picks, we would have had a disastrous season because the trade deadlines. What is that, like the 5th week of the season or something like that? I mean, we'd have to start off at like 1-4, 0-5 or something like that.
The trade deadline is between weeks 8 and 9 now. So
yeah, they moved it up a couple of years ago.
Oh, did they?
Yeah.
Okay.
So later in the season.
I mean, if Miami's 4-4, it's not happening. If they're 2-6, that's something that could happen and you got to figure. I mean, it's going to take. I mean, the only way that they stay where they're at with Tannehill and still have a terrible record is if the defense is just so terrible that Miami's losing games 42-35, or Tannehill gets hurt. If they're 2-6 and Tannehill's playing and the offensive line is doing well, and he's just 10 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, kind of, something.
Then he's
yeah,
done.
Yeah. If they're 4-4 or somewhere in that range where they are still within a puncher's chance of getting to a playoffs, nobody's moving. I mean, the Brandon Albert trade thing is it would have to come down to somebody's going to blow the Dolphins away with an offer they can't refuse, or the Dolphins are completely out of the hunt and they know Tannehill's not the guy. It's going to have to be one of those two options. Otherwise, they're keeping everybody. You don't re-sign Cameron Wake for 2 years if, you're not thinking, you can win this year. So I don't see it happening. And I see Laremy Tunsil starting at left guard. I mean, he's the rookie. If Albert ends up playing left guard, it's because Tunsil outplayed him. So I don't have a problem with that part of it. I mean, I don't think they're just going to give it to the rookie regardless of draft position, but I think he starts left guard, and I think he'll do well there. To me, I just think Albert would do better at left guard than Tunsil would. And Tunsil, the drop-off from Albert to Tunsil at left tackle would be less, in my opinion, than the drop-off between the two. But, I just like the depth. I mean, last year you had, if a tackle went down, you had Jason Fox coming in.
Ugh.
And that was a disaster. This year you have Jermon Bushrod, who has gone to a Pro Bowl. So you've got a guy coming off the bench, or even if he's starting on the inside, that can move outside. I mean, right now, you could take the two starting guards, who appear to be Tunsil and Bushrod, and kick them outside, and you can feel good about it.
Well, having extra depth is a good thing. And so, it's been, I don't know how many games, that'd be an interesting statistic to look up. How many games have Brandon Albert and Juwan James played together? Because it seems like one of them's been hurt. I mean, it just seems like since Tannehill's been there, we've had a bad left tackle playing somewhere that just, didn't have that great a skill set. And so now we suddenly got extra. And, when they brought, I wouldn't think we would have probably signed Bushrod had we known we were going to get Laremy Tunsil in the draft, because he's kind of a luxury pick. But I also don't know that Laremy Tunsil would be a better left guard than Bushrod. And so that's my question that comes. If Bushrod's doing a really good job at left guard, let's just throw that out there, then you have to consider what to do with Laremy Tunsil, at maybe the other guard or at the other tackle position, or So the good news is we have some competition, and it would be stunning to see Dallas Thomas be in there at left guard again this season. I can't imagine that if Dallas Thomas beats Laremy Tunsil at left guard, I'm going to be highly concerned about what's going on.
Chad, why are you trying to give me nightmares?
I'm just saying the guy keeps winning the job every year, and I don't understand what
Dallas Thomas. Yeah, he won't even be on the team. He's not. There's 9 offensive players better right now on this team than Dallas Thomas. I promise you, he will not even make it.
I would have said the same thing last year. So, but anyway,
look, I have learned.
The good news is
my
we
lesson
have options. I mean,
go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, I mean, whatever the lineup is, let's say it's Laremy Tunsil at left tackle and it's Brandon Albert at left guard, or whether it's Albert, Tunsil, and Pouncey, and then on the right side it's Bushrod and James, or it's Turner and James. The reality is now we can have an injury. We can almost have an injury anywhere on the line, probably other than center, and we have a quality player to go in and keep our season going. And that's as much of having successful complete seasons as it is about having upper talent levels, because so often teams, by the time they get to week 9 and 10, that what they're fielding is such a different team than what they started the season with due to injury. And so having quality depth is often something people overlook as a necessity. And so the only player I think that would be, I don't see Juwan James as tradable unless it's an unbelievable offer, because Brandon Albert's contract, I don't see him being back next year because of his contract. It's just going to save so much cap space, and the plan has got to be for Laremy Tunsil to be the starting left tackle by the beginning of next season and going forward. So he'd be the only potential player that would be tradable. It'd have to be a sweet deal, because it doesn't help us much from a cap standpoint to trade him. So it'd have to be some nice picks. Otherwise, I would rather have Juwan James and Brandon Albert with Laremy Tunsil when we maybe are, say the opposite side, or other playoffs. What if we're in the playoff run into the last couple weeks of the season? Well, the last thing you want to have happen is lose your tackle and not have a quality guy to put in there and make the playoffs or compete in the playoffs.
I'm not. You'll forgive me if I don't hold my breath until I actually see it happen. Dallas Thomas being given the boot. So, I mean, for the past 2 years, we thought he was going to leave, and somehow he still sticks around. And not only that, he winds up starting. If he starts this year, I'm going to lose my mind. If he's on the team, I'll maybe tolerate it, I guess. But I won't absolutely lose it. Just don't let him play.
Well, and one thing that always baffled me with the previous coaching staff was how you saw it with Deion Jordan, you saw it with different players. It's like they would draft. I remember specifically last draft when they drafted Jamil Douglas. I was actually at the zoo and I was reading Twitter, and I remember the reporters were saying, yes, he's going to be in there for left guard. He was drafted to be a left guard, and he did not see left guard once. Dallas Thomas started at left guard, and they put him at right guard. And then, you know, it just seems to me that they were wanting to get the best players in there, and they didn't. And as soon as Joe Philbin was fired, they put in Billy Turner at right guard, and he stayed there. Why they didn't do that with Dallas Thomas, I don't know. I don't know what they were seeing. You know, I've seen enough with doing some of the film review that I've been doing for my posts, just watching linebackers just shove him to the ground like crazy. It just blows my mind. I'm with Ron. I don't see him being on the team at all next year.
You know, I couldn't agree more. I mean, that Redskins game, you know, even though we won it thanks to Jarvis Landry, I mean, he gave up an enormous sack, and the guy just ran him right over, and that happened way too much with Dallas Thomas. And I never understood. I understood that Douglas was a rookie and learning, but I mean, he's a tank from a strength standpoint. So I just didn't understand.
Yeah, it's gonna be really crowded at offensive line come training camp. Ron's gonna have to take off in just a minute, so I want to make sure I get this question in before he has to go. Peyton Manning just visited, well, not just now, but earlier this spring, he visited the Dolphins training facility just because he felt like visiting Adam Gase, and apparently. Ryan Tannehill got to pick his brain a little bit. So, real quick, Ron, your thoughts on that, and do you think it's actually even going to help?
Nah, maybe a little. I think it's more. I think it's more something to write a story about than it is something that's really going to help. I mean, he's had Marino there this whole time nonstop. You know, access to Marino. So, what, we don't like Marino now or something? Is that what it is? So,
don't put me
you
in a
know,
corner.
I guess it's good to have a different point of view that's not Marino. I mean, you know, Peyton Manning's obviously great. You see the Gase connection and the respect there. Like I said before, I don't think it's just them blowing smoke that all these players and coaches speak so highly of Gase. It's obvious that they really truly think highly of Gase. I think I take more of that and more excitement from that than I do of anything else.
All right. With that said, I'm going to go ahead and let you go, Ron. Thanks for coming on, dude.
All right. Hey, thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
All right. So Ron Caniff at Finn's Broadcaster. Now that we've got that done. All right. So Chad, you're up next. Peyton Manning visiting Ryan Tannehill. Now I know Ron brought up Dan Marino. Of course, I'll address that after you guys are done talking about it. So, Peyton Manning.
I think it's interesting. I personally believe Peyton Manning's probably the smartest quarterback to ever play the game. His ability to read defenses, his you know, just knowing where to go with the football based on his reads and his audibles and stuff. He was definitely one of the best at doing those things. And so it's nothing but a positive that he's trying to help Tannehill. And Ron's absolutely right. That shows Adam Gase's clout that he has Peyton Manning coming in to work with Tannehill a little bit. Now, this is just an interesting perspective. I'm sure you guys have all followed Pro Football Talk. Mike Florio, the guy that writes for them, and it's always a mixture of humor and along with what he's promoting. But he did actually discuss Peyton Manning coming in here, and his perspective on it was what you guys were talking about a little earlier, is that not only did Gase bring Peyton Manning in to try to help Tannehill, he brought him in to help evaluate Tannehill. And so he basically may be having Peyton Manning say, does he come off to you as a guy that has the right football IQ, the guy that has the right football skills to be my guy? Because, I mean, who would know better than Peyton Manning right now what it takes to be a successful quarterback in the league, what traits you need, what things you need to do.
Hang on. Wait a minute. Hang on, Chad.
Yeah.
Mike Florio's the one who said that Peyton came in to evaluate Tannehill?
He's not saying that he's being told that. He's saying
he's making the assumption.
He's making an assumption that Peyton Manning may not just be coming here to simply help coach Ryan Tannehill, that he maybe also came in to help evaluate Ryan Tannehill. And that was a perspective he had on that. And so whether that's true or not, that's all conjecture, if you will. I don't know that. Neither does Florio, I'm sure. But that's a possibility that Manning's not only here to help, but also to evaluate. And so I suspect at some point, unless he just decides to take the broadcaster booth, I think that Peyton Manning could eventually be a coach, especially a quarterback's coach. He's just so knowledgeable about the position in the game. So from a Tannehill standpoint, though, I absolutely think it's nothing but positive. I can't think he could do anything but just learn beneficial tips from Tannehill. Not that Marino wasn't a good quarterback, but I don't think Marino was on the cognitive level that Peyton Manning is about reading defenses and preparing as a quarterback. I think Marino had a load of talent, and he was special at handling pressure and things like that. But I'll stand by. I think Peyton Manning probably was the smartest quarterback to ever play the game.
And now you, Mr. Chris Early.
Well, my thoughts on the Florio situation is how would Peyton Manning evaluate him? I mean, I can't, unless they were sitting there watching tape, which, I mean, they may have. It doesn't seem like they could just sit there and talk about stuff and just have a conversation, and he could go back and tell Gase, yeah, this isn't your guy. Number two, the other issue of that was it kind of undermines all the talk that were about, well, Gase is there to have Tannehill's back. If he's secretly sending Peyton Manning in there to evaluate him, and Peyton Manning comes back with a bad report, does that mean he doesn't have Tannehill's back anymore? I mean, what? I mean, I don't think that. I mean, I understand Florio's point. It's an interesting little talking issue, but I don't think that was what happened. I don't think Gase needs an outside opinion to evaluate. I think he knows what he's looking for.
I will throw a disclaimer in there. Florio is a pot stirrer, so I mean everybody knows that. So I would just say I just brought that up because it was relevant.
The official term is muckraker.
Whatever you want to call it. So it's not like I believe him to be a analyst or anything like that. But
I mean, that would just be my question. If I was sitting there talking to him about it, would be what exactly is how would he evaluate? I mean, unless they were actually sitting there watching tape. And I mean, Tannehill doesn't come off as a kind of guy that would. He seems like the kind of guy that you could put on the chalkboard and would, ace the test. I don't see him as a guy who would sit there and Peyton Manning could throw some kind of trick at him and Tannehill wouldn't know it. I think the difference is, can Tannehill actually take that onto the field and translate? I mean, really, the three of us could sit here and study enough football that Peyton Manning could quiz us and we could answer the same questions the same as Peyton Manning could. The difference is, could we go out on the field and actually do that? And the answer is no. And that's where Tannehill's going to have to do it. I don't think there would be an issue with Tannehill. Peyton Manning said, "No, this is the look. What is the defense trying to do here?" I think Tannehill would explain it in perfect detail what's going on. He's a student of the game. He would do that. The question would be, can he actually do that when he's under center and you've got the Jets defensive line bearing down on you? Can you, or when Rex Ryan's scheming up, can you do it then? Chalkboard stuff doesn't matter. So yeah, I don't buy that for it stuff, but I think it's good. I mean, I think it's a good sign for the two to lift each other up, or however that meeting went down. I mean, it probably wasn't a whole lot of discussion about actual football. I think it's probably just getting a lot of stuff about Gase and learning about Gase. I think it happened during the time when coaches couldn't talk to the players.
That was
So I
when it
think
was, yeah.
I think it was just about, Tannehill getting to know Gase, maybe getting some inside information as far as what kind of stuff does Gase like to do. What are some things that I may be missing when I'm watching film that he likes to do, or some calls, things like that. I mean, I can see that's what it being, just basically talking with a shop, but nothing to the point of, like Peyton Manning explaining Tannehill, how to beat a cover 7 or something. I mean,
I just thought of an interesting point there with you talking, Duke. And one thing Peyton Manning does have is relevant information. Like we were just talking about Marino, and Marino hasn't played in over decades, and so literally Peyton Manning just won the Super Bowl, and he may have some insight on even that Gase may not have. You assume that they have all the same information, but they may not. And Peyton Manning might say, here's the way you're most successful against a Bill Belichick defense. Here's the best way to approach when you have somebody like Darrelle Revis on the field, specific to those people, because Peyton Manning just last season was competing, against those people. And so he might actually be able to give Tannehill some tips that are extremely relevant on specific players or coaches schemes that he's going to be placing this coming season. So this might be something that people haven't really thought about.
I absolutely agree with that. I can imagine somewhere in that conversation, Bill Belichick's name came up. Strangely enough, Tannehill's had some success against Bill Belichick. I think it was Ian Horton who he was tweeting about it last year before last, or something about how Belichick will run certain defenses if he respects the quarterback. He'll run other defenses if he doesn't respect the quarterback. And the example he used, he said, well, he looked this kind of looks with Tannehill, and it was a sign of respect. As if Bill Belichick says, yes, I have to do different things, or otherwise this guy can beat me. And the other one, he said, well, he ran just a basic defense against Matt Stafford, basically. And he said he was not afraid of Matt Stafford beating him. And I found that was an interesting thing. I mean, it was his opinion, but I thought it was pretty interesting. So I can imagine them talking about that. And let's face it, though. I mean, the only time that Tannehill and Peyton Manning have faced off against each other, both quarterbacks played a heck of a game. As Miami's defense had done their job, Miami wins that game. They were up 28-17 at one point and lost that game 39-36.
That may have been Tannehill's best game. I mean, he was very good in that game. No team
that season had scored more than 24 points against Denver at home. Miami took 36 on them. Only two teams scored more than 30, and that was Cincinnati and New England were the other two, and they did it at home. So I was like, Peyton Manning went up against Andrew Luck that year. Andrew Luck could only score 24 points against Peyton Manning, the Denver defense, which wasn't as good then as they were this season. But still, Tannehill, when your offense goes and puts up 36 points and you lose, something's wrong. And you can't blame the quarterback for that. So, yeah, I mean, I can imagine Peyton Manning got a look at Tannehill and was like, this guy's all right. He's not, I doubt Manning is watching, some, week 16 matchup between Tannehill and, the Vikings or whoever else. So, he got a good look at him, and I thought he probably got a pretty good opinion of him. So, I just think it'd be interesting. I just like to be a fly on the wall and listen to those conversations. I mean, I've said before I'd like to go to the combine and just sit down with the GM and talk about how they scout people.
Yeah, and now I'm going to go into the other direction that something had been brought up. The idea that Dan Marino is in the building every day, all the time. And I believe I've said this before, and I don't want to, I hope nobody thinks I'm trying to be the muckraker Mike Florio or an Omar Kelly kind of guy, but I'm not really that I guess the word is impressed with Dan Marino being around the building all the time, being around Ryan Tannehill all the time. Is he a Hall of Fame quarterback? Yes. Is he a guy who played at the best of the best? Yes. Is he still in the conversation for best passer of all time? Some people would say he's the best passer, maybe not the best quarterback because he never won the big ring, but whatever. I digress. My issue with Dan Marino is that I didn't watch a lot of his games, but the games that I did play, and from just listening to people that have watched him play, Dan Marino played instinctually. He played like impulse driven. He looked at something and he just threw the ball. He didn't really look around and see what was going on. He didn't calculate anything. He just kind of threw it in there and then made stuff happen. And if it worked, it worked. Most of the time it did. And if it didn't, oh well, we're going to try it again next time. The Dan Marino is not a quarterback who can really pass on what he was able to do. He managed to do things in such a way that you can't coach that. You can't coach instinct. You can't coach that incredible arm release that made him so deadly. You can't coach arm strength. You can't coach all of these things. There's not much to Dan Marino's game that you can pass on to a protege. What makes Peyton different is that Peyton did not win with extreme arm strength. He didn't win with awesome awesome arm release. He may have done something with that footwork. I've never seen a quarterback bounce around quite like Peyton did, but I digress again. Peyton won with his brain. Peyton won calculating defenses, reading body language, figuring out what play works when, and being able to audible at the line at a moment's notice. And he also won with Omaha. So, yeah. The thing with Peyton is that Peyton can pass on what he was able to do because Peyton was intellectual QB. Dan Marino can't pass on what he did because he played instinct. That can't be passed on.
I think Marino was a smart quarterback, Lewis.
Well, he was smart, but
he was good at reading defenses. But
he was smart, Chad, but it wasn't his game was not based on those smarts. It was based on I see this happening, I'm going to do this. Period.
yeah, well, Marino was very very confident, but I'm sure what Marino could pass on, most of those things have already been passed on to Ryan Tannehill. Because, like I said, the game changes continuously, and my thought would be is what Marino knows from a quarterbacking standpoint relevant? Because Dan Marino has not been in the league for so long, and it's not like Dan Marino is down at ground zero on the field coaching quarterbacks or anything like that. He's been, in the broadcasting booth on ESPN and whatever one he was on. He seemed to inside the NFL here and there, but his different gigs. That's what he was doing for his post football life, which is fine. But you're not keeping up with, if you will, with what's going on for preparing for quarterbacks. And I think if we is from what we see, if we went inside the locker room and looked at what Peyton Manning does to get ready for a football game for like what was going on last season, I think we would be blown away at how much detail goes into reading what the teams have been doing, reading the specific players' tendencies and knowing all those things. And then after doing all that, being able to step out onto the football field and pull that, knowledge and use it lightning quick, doing audibles and stuff. That's something I don't think Marino would be very good anyway at teaching somebody. And so I agree with you. I don't believe Dan Marino is down there on the field during practices really coaching up Ryan Tannehill. I think Marino is more of a figurehead, to be honest. And I know I don't mean that in a derogatory sense. I think that's mainly what he does for the organization. And I think he's a football mind, and I think they like to maybe bounce ideas off of him. But I think he has very, very little involvement with trying to get Ryan Tannehill ready. That's just my honest opinion.
I don't think he deals with Ryan Tannehill in the aspects like that. I don't think he's preparing game film or looking at stuff like that necessarily. I think some of the things that Marino could look at that could help him would be some of the same things that a coach or somebody like Peyton Manning. I mean, number one, you look for tendencies like this cornerback lines up a certain way. I think that's something that Marino would notice. I think you can't be a successful quarterback in the NFL without noticing certain things like that. I mean, we've seen things like that from Ryan Tannehill. There's a starting cornerback goes out, they put in a replacement, and Ryan Tannehill goes at that guy and tries him, just like Tom Brady or any other quarterback would. I think one thing that Dan Marino could absolutely help Tannehill with, that he was probably one of the best at it, if not the best, would be pocket presence. And some of that is instinct. And I think, I'm one of the biggest Tannehill fans out there, and I will talk about his pocket presence, that issue being overstated. But in high school, he was a wing T quarterback. That was a wildcat. That's what he did. In college, he played wide receiver. Then he moved over. He played a West Coast style then, but he's learning pocket presence basically at the NFL level, and it may never get much better than what it is. Fans don't necessarily want to hear that. It may not be this. It may not. He may not become a magician back there. Probably never will become a magician back there, like Aaron Rodgers, who you watch him play, you watch him move around the pocket, and my brother and I were talking about. He said he heard someone mention he was a hovercraft, and if you watch how he moves, you won't ever see Ryan Tannehill do that. It's just not going to happen. But Marino could help him with that. It's like, listen, these are some of the things that you need to do in the pocket. This is some of the things when you see. He can give him some advice as things to do there. One thing that I remember before Tannehill was even drafted, I was reading some articles about him, and they mentioned Marino. They said Marino told them, he said, I don't care, about these pro days or anything. He said, I'd rather see a quarterback throw 100 times off of his back foot to see what it's like there. Because he knows there's going to be times when the pocket's muddy and you can't step in and make these perfect throws. And I think that's where he could help Tannehill. When he says, you're watching the film and Marino says, all right, you see this? You see when this guy does this. And a lot of it's feel. I mean, you have to sense those edge rushers. You can't sit there and look at the rush. And I think Tannehill is all right at that. But I think there's some minute things that Tannehill could do that I think there's some things that he could do that Marino could help him with. If there was one thing that I would wish Peyton Manning could help him with, along with Marino, is if you ask me one of the things that hurts Ryan Tannehill in the pocket, and if you guys watch tape, you may notice this. It seems like something I noticed. He seems to have like concrete feet. Now, he's not a slow person, but you watch Aaron Rodgers in the pocket, and when he steps back, it always seems like he's very light on his feet, and it's like whenever he senses the pressure, he's always quick to move, whereas Tannehill always just seems to be like a half a step slow. And I don't know if that's awareness. I don't know if that's just some part of his setup. I mean, you even mentioned Peyton Manning with his little giddy up in the pocket where he's dancing around, but that helps with that. And you watch some of these quarterbacks with great pocket presence, how they move. It's like they're, and that's one thing with Marino. He was so light on his feet. You couldn't sack the guy. I mean, he was, I think I read that he was like one of the most elusive quarterbacks ever, not because he could run, but because he knew how to manipulate the pocket so well. And that's just what I would like to see from Tannehill, is quit being so heavy-footed, stay light on your feet, so that when you sense that pressure, you can move. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, Marino was terrific at sliding in the pocket. I mean, he was very good at that, and he might have some tips to help. It's hard to judge how much of Marino's pocket presence was coached and how much of it was just instinct. I mean, you have to have a feel for when people are getting close to you. And Tannehill,
could that be the pocket presence everybody keeps talking about?
I think so. To me, pocket presence comes with more and more repetitions. And Duke mentioned a few things that are important. Is Ryan Tannehill? He was nowhere near somebody like what Andrew Luck had for being prepared in repetition. And Ryan Tannehill, you got to realize his first years, he was still learning to play quarterback. The things he was probably learning other quarterbacks had known, in college, that he just didn't have the reps or time to really get it down. And so there's things that I think that they can do to coach. But last year, one of the things I thought was, one thing they had issues was with pressure, and it just seems to me that Tannehill tends to want to make sure his receivers are open. And there's times where one, you don't have time for your guys to get open, and other times you got to trust your matchups and your receivers. And I'm hoping that's something Gase will really encourage him this year. If you have Devontae Parker one-on-one on the outside, it does not matter at all what the coverage is going to be with that guy man to man. You just realize I'm going to go to Devontae Parker because I believe that guy will not be able to handle him one-on-one. I don't care what position the guy has. I just got to put the ball up in the air. Devontae Parker is going to go get it. And I think Tannehill, that's one of the reasons he struggled for a while with the deep ball is he didn't like to release the ball until he felt the guy was going to beat the guy that he was matched up with. And it's not always about that. And the other thing I'd like to see more do, the coaching staff do more with Tannehill is don't always have him go through progressions. Just tell him, this is what you do with young quarterbacks that can run is, do your first or second read. And if they're blitzing a lot or our line is struggling, if that second read isn't there, just go. Don't even worry about throwing the ball, take off and run. Just run. And that puts a ton of pressure on the defense when you can have a quarterback that's running with the football. And I know you don't want to get your quarterback hurt. And I'm not saying like RG3 the guy and have him run all the time, but I'd like to see Tannehill take off, quite a bit more than he is right now, because that'll really change up what the defenses are doing to try to come in and attack him. And it'll actually help him out with, his feel for pressure. I always thought it helps you to get a feel for what's going on when you take a hit now and then. And so I would do that a lot, especially early in games. Just say, hey, if your first or second read isn't there, just run. Just take off and run. Use your natural ability to make plays and stop thinking so much all the time about, is this guy open or am I doing the right read? Just play, just play.
Yeah, and along with that, it makes me think how much of his quick reads, how much of this was based on the offense. Because there were a lot of times it was just about getting the ball out of his hands quickly. And, and I agree with you. There's been times where he doesn't anticipate the throw being, especially deep. I think that was, I think that's been, I don't know if it's getting to his head or what. I think that's something he worries about. So with the D ball, he wants to try to, whereas a guy like, I think if Marino's going to give him advice, Marino would just say, just let it go, man. Just let it fly. Whereas Tannehill wants to try, he thinks about it. And anybody that's played sports knows that, when you start thinking about what you're doing, you're not going to succeed. I mean, at some point, when you're shooting a foul shot, you just do it you can do it with your eyes closed. The muscle memory, you're so familiar with it.
Second nature.
So, yeah, you just do it. I mean, you don't even think about it. Some of these guys, they make plays because, they know where, they just know what's going to happen when they make it through. A guy like Aaron Rodgers, he can probably close his eyes and make a throw, and he can tell you where the ball is going to land because he's done it so many times. And I think with Tannehill and the deep ball, it's not that he doesn't want to pull the trigger. I think he overthinks it. And one thing that I read that kind of hinted at what Chad was talking about was right after that little mini camp they had, one of the writers was doing a report about how Gase was interacting, and he was talking about Gase. One of the things he mentioned was he told Tannehill he should not have gone to where he went during 7-on-7. And I found that was very interesting because whoever Tannehill threw it to, that was not who Gase wanted him to throw it to. So it makes you think, yeah, this is, number one, why did that happen? Number two, did that not happen before? When they were running 7-on-7s and Tannehill dumps it off to Landry, but Parker was somewhere else or whoever else was running another route, did they tell him, say, hey, you should run it here, or are they just content that he threw it to Landry? Seems like to me, Gase is like, no, we're going to do it my way. and you're going to do it my way. And I think he'll coach Tannehill up to do things like that. And I think part of it comes with trust. I mean, I don't think he really trusted Mike Wallace that much. I think he trusts Jarvis Landry. And if you noticed, a lot of people talk about, well, Tannehill can't throw with anticipation. And I watched some games from his rookie year. It was the second game. It was against the Raiders. And he steps back in the pocket, and he throws the ball before Brian Hartline even gets out of his break. I mean, Keith and I watched this, and he was throwing the ball, and Hartline was still running straight ahead, and then cut back, and the ball was there. And I watched that, and I said, well, that was his second game as a pro, and that is an anticipation throw. You don't make that kind of throw if you don't trust your receiver to be there. That's why Hartline had over 1,000 yards, because Ryan Tannehill fed him, because Ryan Tannehill trusted him. I think he trusts Landry. I think he's getting there with Parker. I think he will get there with a guy like Carew. Steels are still working on. If he can get there with Cameron, he has that kind of trust with Clay. If you can get Duarte, I mean, he's got these weapons. If he can just get to where he trusts where these guys are, I think you're going to start seeing some of these type of throws. And to me, last game against the Patriots, I have 2 games DVR'd, and that's one of them. I was watching it again last night, and that deep throw he has to Parker, where Parker out jumps the cornerback and comes down with the ball. That was the throw where Tannehill just said he was back in the pocket, and Jamal Sheard was basically coming at his knees. Dallas Thomas getting pushed back into him, and Tannehill just throws it up. I mean, it was still a 10-10 game. He just throws it up and says, screw it. I'm just throwing it and let my guy go get it. And he did. And I think when you get to that point with a receiver, good things will start to happen. And I think we're going to see that this year.
Yeah, I can't wait to see what's going on, and I can't wait to meet the rookies tomorrow. I'm actually going to be going to the Miami Dolphins Special Olympics for the rookies to get their first taste of what it means to be a Miami Dolphin off the field. I think we're going to wrap this up. Let's see, 9:45. Yeah, we ran a little late, but that's okay. A lot of stuff to talk about. Our interview with Jacques McClendon, that brought up some interesting things. We're going to go ahead and wait until next week for some more stuff. We're going to see what happens there. I'm hopefully also be covering Rashad Jones' celebrity basketball tournament. Last year I went to his softball tournament, and that wound up getting rained out. So good for Rashad picking something that's actually indoors, so there won't be any chance of rain. Hopefully now the power doesn't go out or something. That would be pretty bad. So that's going to be it for this show. I want to thank everybody who joined us. My co-host, Chad Ronnebaum. You find him at GoFins4SB. Ron Caniff, at Fins Broadcaster. And, of course, my good friend Chris Early, otherwise known as Duke. You can find him at the Earl007. I am your host, Louis Sung, and we will see you all next time for another edition of the PhinManiacs.com podcast. Good night.